For joining us today. Have some exciting news to share. We are here today to release a preliminary list of sites around the city where we believe we can add housing to help people get out of unsheltered homelessness. We're excited to announce that with the release of these sites, in addition to the leased units we are looking at and the hotels we are working on, we believe we now have a path to deliver 1,000 units of housing that will help meet the goal to get 1,000 people off the streets and into housing. So excited to talk to you a little bit about the list today and about the opportunities. We will release a map and a list today of these initial sites. You'll see a couple of things. These represent all regions of the city. They represent an initial list. They are not a complete and final list. We do have other sites that we are in current negotiations with that are owned by private landowners. The private landowning community has been very cooperative and collaborative. Some of them have some details we have to work out with their land before they go public. So while this is an initial site, it is not yet an exhaustive site. And so that gives you the initial list. We will give you addresses and locations. What you'll see from these is they include publicly owned land by the city. They include land owned by CDOT or by the Denver Housing Authority or by Denver Health and Hospital Association, and they include private landowners. Some of them are hotel sites. Some of them are open plots of land we could use for micro-communities, but we are very excited about the incredible work being done by the team in the Emergency Operations Center and across the city to help identify, work with, vet these sites as our initial opportunities. In terms of our community engagement, also have had continued great feedback from residents around the city. We've now held more than 20 town halls in the 30 days or so since I took office. Nearly 3,000 residents who have showed up for conversation, feedback, comments in those sessions. We have another 14 more of those to come, including 2 more tonight. And so in each of those town halls, we'll be having conversations about these sites, answering questions available for information that any residents or neighbors may have. So those are all exciting developments for us. In addition to that, you may have seen we are also now in the process of acquiring the both pallet homes or tiny homes we will use to occupy sites that will be open space. We put in a bill before City Council that will have a vote on 200 pallet home shelters. We've put out an RFP for tiny homes as well that we expect to move in the next week or two. So this means we have access to sites. We have access to the construction pipeline of homes that we'll need. We'll continue now the community engagement process to help land these sites and these units to prepare to get people moved off of the streets and into housing. So that's the update for today. Thank you all so much for being here. Excited to jump in and take questions that you all may have about any of the topics I raised. Yes, Joe.
So the selection of sites I'm seeing here on the map, some of these are hotels. I believe one of them is that Best Western. But some of these, to clarify, are some of these vacant parcels? Like, are some of these being eyed for tiny homes, or are these all things with existing units on them?
Great question. So they vary. Some of them are hotels. 2 of them are hotels you would have heard about before, the Best Western and the Stay Inn. Those are already released. There's another one that's connected to a library on the west side, the Corky Gonzalez Library. Most of the others are all vacant plots of land where we would look to site tiny homes or pallet homes. We are still working on, obviously, Joe, we have parallel effort going around leased units. So we met with apartment owners from across the city this week who represent about 45,000 units across the city. We're working directly to bring on leased units where we can move people directly into those apartment units. And we're still working on hotel conversions that added another source of units, but these are the ones that we have for today.
So you say this is a preliminary list. So are these like sites for sure locked in, or are these still up for debate?
So these are sites that we think we know have the materials that they would need. They have access to public transit in the area. They have access to utilities. We have the amount of space we would need, and we have a partnership with these landowners to make these viable sites. We'll still have conversations with community about the logistics, how they might work, how it might operate, when they might come online. But these are, we think, sites that all are ready to go, and we'll now begin the process of all the things like permitting, if there are zoning changes required, neighborhood conversations. And then, as I mentioned, we do have other sites not on this list that are held by private landowners who are in good faith negotiations with us but weren't yet ready to go public.
And you kind of answered that question, but some districts are not included in this list. Is there a reason why?
Yeah, and so we have sites in all of the districts. Some of the sites that we're working with private landowners on, they were not yet ready to go public on, but we do have sites in all 11 districts. Yes, sir.
Estimate for acquisition costs for these preliminary sites?
Yes, we can get those. The ones that you know already would be the Best Western and the Stay In. Those are already publicly released, and we can share those. Many of the others are partnerships we're in negotiation with, so they might be CDOT or DHHA or others where they're willing to let us use the land at no cost. We've also had some very generous private landowners who are willing to help us use access to their land without additional cost. And so I'd say we're in negotiations on some of those, but we can present you what we know are existing costs.
Saludos para aquí, José Frank de NBC Telemundo. For the Hispanic people, un poco resumen sobre esta propuesta, ¿en qué consiste?
Creo que esos son los primeros sitios que queremos hablar con la comunidad sobre lo que está pasando aquí. Vamos a tener más que 14 juntas de la comunidad donde gente puede venir para hablar si tienen preguntas y también pueden conectar con nuestra oficina aquí si quieren hacer más, pero este nos da una oportunidad para tener 1,000 de personas que en este momento están viviendo en la calle para obtener casas. Gracias a usted. Yes.
District 5 has been fairly resistant to both the state of emergency and, it appears also identifying housing sites. I'm curious very specifically if you could speak to the strategy in locating the sites in District 5 and what the community relations are looking for.
Yeah, we do have a site in District 5 that we're excited about. We've talked to the councilwoman there about it, and we've talked with private landowners there who are willing to be partners, and so we're optimistic that we have a path to a potential site in District 5, but we're still working on negotiations with that landowner.
And what's the status of the councilwoman at this point on that site?
We've had very good conversations. I did a tour of the district with her this week. We've talked about, I think, her thoughts and concerns. I think she's very open to partnership here, and so I'm very optimistic about our partnership around sites there.
And then looking at this list, we're seeing kind of a replica, it looks like, of the inverted L, a concentration of sites in working class neighborhoods, black and brown neighborhoods. Can you speak to some of the concerns of those neighborhoods that whiter, wealthier neighborhoods aren't seeing that kind of concentration?
Yeah, I don't think that's true from the sites we've laid out here. What we'll see is they actually do represent geographic diversity across the city. They do represent socioeconomic diversity and where they're located. And as I mentioned, we do have sites in all 11 council districts. That has been a priority for us and for the council. Some of those are just still in negotiation. So we were intentional about making sure we did have an equitable map of where these sites would go, and also mindful of where the current burden of care is landing right now, which is right now we know the great majority of both encampments and service sites are in District 9 and District 10. And so we want to make sure we can decentralize some of those services and some of those supports. And so that's why you'll see us moving more south, more east to make sure we have a broader representation of support around the city.
Can you speak to the specific ones that are in white and wealthier communities out there because of that?
Sure, we have one at 13, you'll see the one here at 1380 South Birch, which is in South Denver. We have another one here at 5500 East Yale, which is in South and Southeast Denver. We have obviously the sites in Central Park, which is the Best Western. And then we have other sites that we're still working on in District 5 and 6 and 4 that are not yet public. Yes, sir. Oh, sorry. Yes, sir.
For Univision en español, ¿considera que esto podría beneficiar a los migrantes que han llegado de la frontera?
Gracias por la pregunta. En este momento, and I may want to do this one in English too for folks who want it, but en este momento todavía estamos enfocando en ayudando a la gente que están llegando de la frontera, pero estamos enfocando en un diferente tipo de servicios para ellos personas porque sabemos que tienen diferentes historias de la vida y diferentes cosas que necesitan. Entonces todavía seguimos a apoyar a la gente que llegan de la frontera. No están viviendo directamente en esas casas, tenemos otros sitios donde le estamos ayudando y vamos a conseguir hacer eso, pero por la mayoría vamos a quedarlos separadas. The question was about what we're doing on migrant sheltering, whether this would be a direct placement site for newcomers. We are not targeting these as sites or services for folks that are newcomers, that are migrants. We are continuing to pay careful attention to getting them access to shelter and to services, but we find a different set of needs, different histories, and different long-term plans for those individuals, so these are not the same housing strategies.
Mayor Johnson, could you talk a little bit about the sweep that happened today? We know that you had mentioned you only wanted the sweep to happen for places of emergency, so just wondering how many more of those are you maybe anticipating or any other areas that appear to propose a state of emergency?
Yeah, thank you. I went to visit that encampment yesterday to talk to residents. we had some real concerns about safety for both the unhoused residents there and for the housed neighbors there. We did have a gun incident at that same encampment about a month ago. Chief and I evaluated it, and at that point, we believed we could keep the encampment safe because that person was not from the encampment. When we had a second incident 2 nights ago, and we had 2 different shooters on site, I talked with Joseph, who you saw on the cover of the Denver Post today, about his experience. I think they're afraid. They're sleeping in a tent in the middle of the night, and that doesn't provide them access to safety. What we know most of all is this underscores the urgency of why this strategy is so important. Right now, when we look at the places where we have tiny home communities, where we have safe outdoor spaces, we have dramatic reductions in police activity. I was talking to Chief Thomas. One of our sites had 3 calls over the entire course of the year up at 48th and Peoria. The other one, the tiny home village on 40th and Monroe, has had maybe 14 calls over the last 12 months. You compare those with encampments or congregate shelters where we see literally thousands of calls a year. What we know is these are people living in locations where we cannot provide the support and safety they need to be able to get their lives back together, not to mention just feel like they're free from violence. And so we were very worried about the safety of the unhoused residents and the residents. That's why we've moved them. It's also why we provided an extra 24 hours to make sure they had time to gather their things and be able to move on. It's also why we're providing all the same services we provided in the last 7-day encampment we will provide in these same 2 days. That includes mental health support, includes access to storage. We, for the first time, sent co-responders to as our deployment today to do that work. We believe that people were traumatized by that shooting. We want to make sure they have access to mental health support as a real priority, so it's the first time we've sent out a co-responder unit, which is, as you know, made up of officers and mental health workers together as a pair. And the report from the field so far is that's gone very well so far. Yes, sir.
On the encampment suite, why were they initially given only 24 hours and then it's naturalized to 48? I'm just specifically the 48 stuff they've noticed.
Yeah, so generally in the past, when there has been a shooting, we have historically done an immediate clearance of that site. I went to visit that site yesterday with DPD, talked to residents, and we believed we could keep the site safe for an extra 24 hours with increased police supervision and ride-bys that Chief Thomas made possible. And because of the size of that site and without the trauma of the individuals, I made the decision to push it back 24 hours. We would have time for more services, more support, and a more stable transition for folks that were in the encampment.
Mr. Mayor, the 200 tiny home units that may be in the pipeline pending council approval from this week, are any of them going on those sites?
So think about this as, acquiring the housing supply we need to figure out where to deploy them, and acquiring a set of locations where we can do that. These locations would be among the spots where we could deploy pallet homes or tiny homes, and so that's the process we'll engage in now, is conversations about these sites publicly, look at permitting and any changes to get them ready, and then also we have additional sites that are not yet disclosed that will also be sites that
Do you
could
think
be
the
able.
timeline will match up? Because I was hearing possibly they could be delivered by November 1st, right, or something?
We're still targeting November and December as our path for what we're calling moving days, where we'll be able to get sites up and ready. We'll be able to get people out of encampments and into units. And so trying to land a number of planes at the same time, but it's getting the supply of units, getting the sites prepared, then getting people in, taken, and ready for moving. And our target is still November and December for those dates.
And you feel confident they can all mesh together?
We do. This makes us confident. We both have the sites we need to get there. We have the supply of homes we need to get there. And we know we have the overwhelming need from unhoused people who want to get there. And I think that's the conversation I had with Joseph and Kevin and others. Yeah, I was there yesterday, talked to 4 people. 3 of them were veterans. And one of them was actually Willardo, who was a gentleman I spoke to when we had to move him from 22nd and Stout a month ago. So it underscores for us that we know what happens in this context. If we move people without someplace else to go, they move to the next location. What we really want more than anything is someplace for them to go that will offer safety, security, and access to work. And that's what we know these sites will be able to do.
Are you concerned at all that people who are unhoused won't, present the buy-in that you're hoping for, that there will be resistance to moving into some of these micro communities? There are people I've talked to that feel like the money that's being used for housing like this and for these micro communities should instead be used for permanent housing. And I just wonder what has been kind of the response from
Yeah.
people who are unhoused and whether or not they will want to move into these.
The response has been strong and consistent from every person I've talked to that they are very excited for the chance to get access to housing. And so I spent a lot of time talking to unhoused neighbors and in encampments and getting feedback. And I'll always ask them, what kind of units would you like? Would you do this if it's offered? And what's really clear is they might not take a congregate setting. they would take an individualized unit that has a locked door and their own privacy and security and stability. So we think there's going to be very, very high levels of demand. We obviously see this as a process of transition. We also want to get people into permanent housing. Some people we can move directly to that through our lease program where we can get leasable units. As you know, or anyone in this room knows, it is very hard to find units to lease in Denver right now for anybody of any income level. And so this is part of our long-term strategy to build and develop more permanently affordable housing units because we know that's a need for the whole city. In addition, for folks that are unhoused, what the violence this week at the encampment underscores for us is we can't let people continue to live and die on the streets of the city while we wait for that long-term housing plan. We need a transitional housing plan, which this can provide to get people back on their feet, back into safety and stability, and then preparing for long-term permanent housing.
We have time for one more question.
Yeah, Joe.
I know you're excited about some other options, and this is a preliminary map, but does this map, as it stands today, present enough space for 1,000 people?
This map, if we used every single site, would provide enough units for 1,000 people. We think we always know, we're humble too about the fact that these sites all get complicated. You know, we have a preliminary access to a site. We got to do all the permitting, all the siting for each of these locations. And so do you find a broken utility line or do you find a challenge on remediation needed for a site that we weren't anticipating until we get our teams on the ground? We're going to try to have more sites than we know we would need, knowing that some of them will hit complications or some might not be ready on the timelines that we want. So we think all of these are promising sites that could work, and they provide us a path to 1,000. But we also will continuously work on sourcing more sites so that we have a pipeline for those if needed. Okay. Thank you all so much for being here. Really appreciate your focus and attention on this issue, and very excited for us to get on the path to get 1,000 people off the streets and into housing. Have a great day.